rise and face the flag, will recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I can't even hear him.
I know.
Pledge of Allegiance, right?
To the
Yep.
flag.
Yep.
Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. To
To the republic
For which it stands,
stand
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
justice for all.
liberty and justice for all.
Tell him to talk louder.
Comment beyond saying it was really an interesting election.
Is that done? Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Yep.
Just the
And I'm
election.
going to leave it at that.
Yes.
So, I am at a disadvantage in not having an agenda in front of me.
It was the same as every meeting last year.
Yeah.
So, I guess, are there minutes to act on?
No.
No.
Are there, never mind that.
Yeah, Frank, it's capital review capital requests submitted, which I don't think we have any yet.
Right,
Roundtable of lessons learned with last budget cycle.
okay,
Review and discuss 5-year capital needs request spreadsheet.
good, I understand we have a new worksheet.
We have a new worksheet that we were developing last year. I imagine we probably want to revisit it.
I thought I saw an email from Don referring to a new
That's the thing he emailed.
Draft of a worksheet. That's all right.
Yeah.
We can hold on that for a minute. I think the first thing we have to talk about is what, if anything, we learned from last year's capital meetings and recommendations and what actually occurred at town meeting. I'd have to say that it was a little bit challenging, given that we had articles that we weren't prepared to act on because we hadn't received sufficient information. So I think the first thing we need to do as a committee is identify what we expect for every capital submission. So, obviously, we want a 5-year plan aged out showing priority for each item, priority by year and priority by need. Does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. The second item that I would like to talk about, because I think this is pivotal in making the Capital Committee an effective board, is how do we conduct business? How do we determine priorities? I mean, we can have everybody telling us this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3. But unless we have a
Can we turn the
means
mics?
to fund
It's 100%.
Yeah.
those needs, I don't know how effective we can be.
No.
I mean, about 2 years ago, I talked about at a capital meeting the need to identify the revenue or the funds that would be committed to capital. To my knowledge, that hasn't been done. And I'd like to get a sense of the committee as to how important you feel that is in our mission.
I mean, I think it's very important. We have been going with the belief that it's we use free cash every year. Once we have a certified number for free cash, that's generally what we plan to spend for capital, give or take a little bit. However, the last couple of years, we've also then used a couple $100,000 to balance the budget. So it doesn't always work that way.
Hey, everyone. And
Hi, Don.
certainly, if the budget creates more and more demand on our available funds, it makes it difficult for us as a group to identify a path. When we talked, I'm going back to 2019 right now. When we did the capital analysis and we brought in John Madden to look at our operations, or at least our funding processes, one of the things that I thought was pretty well agreed on was that we needed to identify a portion of the levy that would be committed to capital needs. Now, I'm not crazy enough, knowing we have the middle school turning the corner in the South Shore of Oak, approaching that intersection, to say I would like people to vote for a capital override to create a fund that can be used from year to year, capital needs. But what's our alternative? Any thoughts?
Well, don't we need a 5-year plan first? There are so few departments that have submitted a 5-year plan. Unlike Mr. DeCudo, who has provided a 5-year plan to the Finance Committee. And it's with the understanding that the numbers change. We don't expect something that costs $100,000 in 2024 to continue to cost $100,000 in 2025 or 2026, but it identifies the priority of that department, and we do not have those requests or that information from most of the departments that request capital items.
Yeah.
They're not prioritized.
That's a fair point. And I think the problem that we're having in getting people to do this is they're not taking this process seriously.
Correct.
Yeah.
They're looking at it and saying, what's the difference? We're not going to have money to do it anyway, so why go through this exercise? The schools back in 17 and 18 did a really good job identifying, at least in broad strokes, what their needs were going to be for the following years. That kind of fell apart a couple of years ago. And I saw an email that was forwarded from, I think it was from George, that had a list of items, but really what I would consider very sketchy information. There doesn't appear to be a point of justification as to what goes where and what the priorities are. Kathleen, you're on the capital group for the school, are you not?
I'm not on the capital for the school.
Oh, you're not?
No.
Okay. For some reason I thought you were after.
I pay attention to them, but I'm not on the committee.
Do we have a representative from the schools?
No, we were
No.
talking about that before you got here. We have the vacant school committee member appointed by the select board, and we don't have a liaison from the district appointed by the school committee.
Just a note too. Dawn arrived at 5:41 p.m.
Hey,
Just for the
Frank.
record.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, you're here. Great.
Yep.
Take over. Be my guest.
All right. So,
We're just talking about lessons learned from last year.
yeah, I question our mission statement and our charge. What really are we tasked to do? I think we all feel honorable in what we want to do, but at the end of the day, we typically rubber stamp everything. Finance department decides if they can fund it or not, and that's it. I know we're in the bylaws. We're supposed to have a capital committee, but I really question. I think it's a level of efficiency that's not being efficient, and I don't know if we should. Either we need to change our mission statement and have a committee that has teeth behind it, or dissolve. I don't see what we're doing. And that's my honest opinion. I joined this committee back in I think Frank was the chair at the time back in 2015, so I'm going on 10 years now. And it was always, we wanted to put together a 5-year capital plan for the entire town. And, I know I walked in late, and I apologize to everyone. Traffic was a ridiculous beer, but I know it's not an excuse, but it's a lot amusing. But I know I caught the tail end of what Kathleen was mentioning about, a 5-year capital plan. And I know I witnessed what Frank was discussing back when Ernie was back with the schools district. He put together in 2016, 17, and 18 a 5-year capital plan. That was it was targets, right? And it was pretty comprehensive. It was large, it was big, it was somewhat detailed. He had some data that was backed up. But in the economy that we live in today, where a 5-year capital plan, and we all lived through COVID where all of a sudden supply chains stopped, cost doubled, tripled, whatever. I mean, who knows where, if a 5-year plan it's a good target, it's a good representation, it's more of a placeholder of what departments' needs are. I think it's really helpful for the DPW, for roads and things like that, to have a 5-year operating plan. But if we don't have control of the purse strings, and we're not a financial committee where we don't have to look at what the levy takes in and any other type of revenue streams that we have available to us, if we can't look at those numbers and say, oh yeah, we can set aside X amount of dollars for this long-term project. If we don't have control of that, and zero say over what happens with the levy funds, do we need a 5-year plan? Well, what does that do for us? It forces departments to do something that they're not vested in. None of them give it to us. I ask it every year. They don't give it to us. Todd did. Ernie did back in the day. Nobody else. If we don't have teeth behind it, we're not getting what we asked for. We have things like the district, when they had the compromise, spending funds that none of us in this room were even aware of. Even as a selectman, I don't know if you were fully aware of the money.
I don't know where the additional state funds went.
Right.
Got it, yeah.
I'm questioning what our mission statement is, and what we're tasked to do. And Frank, can you hear what I'm saying?
I can.
Okay. I would like everybody's honest opinion on this. And I'll start to my left. I'll start with you, Josh. I'm sorry, I don't know you.
Tom Pistorino.
Tom, are you on the committee now?
Yes.
Okay, well, sorry, but you just hear my speech. I'm Don, committee chair, Don Essen. Very nice to meet you. Josh, what do you think?
No, I appreciate your insight, and I certainly agree. I've said it a number of years that unfortunately we seem like we're spinning our wheels more often than not, trying to understand what our role is and trying to assess the capital situation for the town. And it just seems like our hands are tied in a lot of cases where either the money is not there, we don't have a definitive bank account, if you will, to be able to decipher whether or not all of this work that's going to go into putting these plans together. And it might seem like not a lot of work for some, but I mean, from the facilities perspective, being Mr. DeCudo, a new department head, not having the department for 12 years and trying to encompass what a 5-year plan looks like. Putting together an initial plan may have been a lot easier for Todd than it would be for the fire chief or the police chief or a department that's been, there for 30 years, trying to, assess what has been assessed and what hasn't been assessed in relation to assets for the town. The problem we've been talking about for a number of years is that we don't have an asset management system, if you will, to actually really define what do we have and when do we get it and when do we need to replace it? Because a lot of these questions that we're asking for, and we're asking for all these 5-year plans, having a piece of software to be able to analyze that would make things a lot easier across the board. It's not just so much for let's just put a plan together, because again, I think we sort of get lost in the rough here is the fact that just like technology, like you can't do it once. You got to continuously keep at it. Otherwise, it's going to be no good. We can put a 5-year plan together and we can do it. What happens with the next 5-year plan? The facilities manager goes somewhere else, or there's changes in the staffing, or whatever happens, and you have to pick up on that, and you have to be a continuous process. And I think, unfortunately, we haven't even got the software to be able to identify those assets. And we're slowly working behind the scenes, and we have been, Todd and I, over the years, in trying to get what we need to. But again, it took me 12 years to get where I am. It's going to take Todd probably another real 5 years to really define what facility is and how it works. And, frankly, I don't even think the facilities department has a budget, to my knowledge. I think it's been sort of pieced together by, other departments. And I don't know. I don't want to go on and on, but at the end of the day, I agree with you. I think that we really don't have a full insight into what it is we're supposed to be doing. And without having consensus, it's difficult,
Well, before I go to everybody else, Todd, Mary, and everybody else, let's have a brief discussion of what Josh just said. And I totally agree. I think we've been talking about an asset management software program for many, many years. And the software is one cost, right? Just buying the software. The hardware is a one-time capital cost wherever it resides. So if it can sit on the server, or if we need another server, whatever it takes. That's the easy part. The data implementation is huge, right? If we're talking every asset that the town is owned, and then breaking up, having a subsection of that for the district, and then a subsection of that of what is just Whitman owned in the school district and what is shared. Who does that data entry? That's a substantial amount of work. We've had numerous discussions on how some bright people came up with, I don't know if it was Josh or whoever, or maybe it was Dan when he was, part of this committee, where maybe task a student with that, or a group of students, or a class. But again, these are all hypotheticals that don't exist right now. So the purchase is what is the easy part. Writing the check's the easy part. The hard part is the implementation. But speaking on the easy part, but writing the check, we know where we're at financially in the town with the two big projects, right? And in other things that we have. What type of funding do we even have to support capital projects? The DPW building, the middle school, these are big numbers that are going to come up heavy up our funding. So those are other things to think about that are very concerning. I am very happy to continue going forward with this committee. I just, either we have teeth in departments have to come in here. Look at what we wrestled with last year with the school district. They didn't even come to us until I don't even know what it was, like January or February. Yeah. And it was like pulling teeth trying to get that stuff out of them.
Yeah, but and again, I don't want to spin the wheels here again, but I think that is the big question. Do we have the authority to tell the schools or ask the schools for this information, or if in fact they're managed by a school committee and they propose X, Y, Z, the school committee votes it and approves it, and they send it forward to the capital committee, and whether the capital committee wants to deal with it or assess it and say yes or no, it goes to town meeting floor, and the town taxpayers end up making the voters make the decision. At the end of the day, what we say, does it really matter? And that's what's really, I guess, the big question here is
Right.
that
That way, it goes capital committee and then it comes to FinCom. And what FinCom has done for years, and I've been on the committee almost going on 6 years now, is we would take the recommendation of the capital committee and support it to the extent that there were funds available. And it was prioritized. When Dave
Yeah.
Cadero, he was a FinCom member and also the
Yep.
chair of the capital committee. What springs to mind, and I'm sure you remember this, Josh, was the year of the playgrounds.
Yep.
Well, I read the playground report and questioned, why are we doing all of the playgrounds? The report stated Duval was in desperate need. It was in, life-threatening situations. Conley needed some rehab. The next thing we know, on FinCom, they're all getting done. And I was asked, don't you care about children? And I said, yes, I do. I have grandchildren in both schools. But it went from a report from a committee
Yep.
or consultant hired by the schools to analyze the needs to it grew. So FinCom does take the recommendations of the capital committee. And I think Justin has been great on this committee saying, prioritize it, and was there a funding source? Did you apply for a grant? There were criteria that department heads were asked to
Yeah.
check off. But
Yeah.
in terms of, do we need to continue to meet my position is absolutely yes. Every well-run town has a 5-year capital plan. Hanson, at their town meeting, when they were desperately looking for money, they had a 5-year capital plan. I have a copy of it.
Yes.
Frank Malisi, you're
Yeah.
familiar
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
him more than
Frank and I have talked numerous times.
So
He feels the same way I do, to be honest with you. He feels like, they go through the exercise, they organized it, but still it has no teeth behind it. It really means very little.
If we didn't have a 5-year capital plan, I mean, we don't really have a formal one now, but by having one, you can require department heads to
Live by.
live by it and look at what other funding might be available. So Josh is great at looking at grants
Yeah.
for technology year over year over year. And he only does that because he knows what's coming up down in the future, knows when to use the E-rate money. Todd, I think, has some visions of cutting utility bills and feeding that back into some of his improvements and continuing to draft that down. If we have something like that for, the fire department could be a historic building. Like it's 100 years old. We can make it historic. That would be eligible for CPA funds to restore the facade when it comes to that, or the roof of the armory. But we're not planning that in advance. We're getting the armory roof is leaking. We need to fix it.
yeah, we've been doing a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, I think
Yeah.
not so much recently, but years ago, I think it was all done on demand as it happened. We needed it. We acted on it, and I think that's obviously again comes back to the future planning. But yeah.
You guys bring up another great point. I mean, that fire department building, we're going to need something new quick.
I mean,
They can't continue to live in that.
find us $30 million and we'll.
I know.
It might be
All
more
right.
than that, but
Let's continue. Sorry, what do you think of my
First, I want
thing?
to give you this. You haven't.
Thank
This
you,
is for you.
sir.
So that's basically a rolling 5-year plan forever, as long as somebody keeps plugging in after I'm dead and gone. Whatever's taken out. And
That's not it.
happily retired.
yeah.
That's
My biggest thing for me is the frustration part. Like, I'm looking at the school's request and they like a chiller. It'd be nice to know that they needed a chiller 3 years ago. Because what if I'm putting a chiller on? They're expensive. So if I throw a chiller on, all of a sudden in February they come and say, "Oh yeah, we need a chiller." Well, that's planning is everything. That's how I feel, and I try to be as organized as I can. I try to look at the absolute needs. I try to spread it out amongst the buildings, not just stay like at the senior center or stay at the town hall. I try to spread out what we need. I try to go efficiency with everything. But like last year, I have to say I was very frustrated, working very hard on the capital projects, and then at the last second, the schools come in. And then we're having meetings on, do we put it on this one? Do we do it on special? Do we take this one off? Which ones do we really want?
Yeah.
And that's frustrating, It'd be good to know what they want, because it'd probably be good for them to know what we want. Then that way we can decipher, like, okay, maybe I can wait another year on this, and I'll do this instead, So it's just frustrating that you have all these meetings and you go through all this stuff. And then last year we literally had 3 or 4 meetings about what are we going to take off because they came at the end of the day.
I don't think
And-
we got anything.
Huh?
I don't.
No, but we spent time. Like we came here and spent time on that. And it was like, and I know you reached out so much
Yeah.
and we got nothing back from them. I just wish they would work with us a little bit or just give us a heads up, on what their needs. And I will say too, about the playgrounds, one of our meetings here, the school committee member was here and said, no, we also need a fire panel.
Yep.
But we spent hundreds of $1,000s on a playground when the school needed a fire panel.
Yep.
That didn't make sense at all.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think the district is in a how do I put this delicately? They're in a comfortable position being a district. We don't have a lot of authority over them as we would a regular school.
And personally, I would love to work with the facilities manager over there. We could exchange vendors. Maybe I can't get a hold of my particular vendor. Maybe he has a person or she has a person. I can reach out. We can, bounce things off each other. I wish we could work like that. It'd be
We're
great.
repeating ourselves. We've had these conversations last year, the year before, and the year before. Simple things like whether it's the phone system or the fire alarm system that you just talked about. We would like consistency. We would like a Honeywell everywhere, globally throughout Whitman, or
Same generators everywhere.
same generator. So we don't have to have the spare parts list for each and every generator on site. We can have 2 for the town. We can do minor savings in those type of thought processes.
Just the maintenance contracts alone. I mean, you can have maintenance contracts
You can
across
bundle
all
it
of your
together and you can save. But it's difficult.
And again, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think I've been trying to get this, a message across for probably, 6 or more years now. And the fact that, how do we fix it? This is the problem. We are highlighting it right here, this discussion right now.
Yep.
How can it be fixed? And I don't know that I don't think this committee has the ability to fix that. I think there has to be some movement from, and again, I don't want to put the Board of Selectmen on the spot, but I think there has to be some movement from the town leadership on both the town side and the school side. Because again, we're 2 organizations right now, and we shouldn't be. It should be 1 organization, and it's 2. So until we fix that part of it, we're broken, and I don't know how to fix that.
Mary, do you have anything to?
Well, I think it's important that we, fill that position with a school committee member from the school and have the liaison and somebody that's here all the time at every meeting, to get information back and forth to the district. Yeah. We didn't have that, and that was the biggest disconnect that we had last year with the schools. So I think if we do that and had like George Farrow, if he's willing to step up as that person for the liaison, that would help. I think that we still need a committee to look at the capital items, the bigger items, rather than just the, department that's putting it forward. I think that's great when we review all the information and the quotes and all that. So I still think that is important. I'd like to see, a certain percent of free cash every year just to be put aside into the capital stabilization account.
We need that.
We
Rainy
need
day
that on a
fund.
regular
I
basis. That
totally agree.
fire
Yeah.
is he's still going to need the fire engine. And that 1.2, 1.4 million, where are we going to get it from? When all of a sudden we need it now. If we just put in 300,000 a year or whatever, and that comes off the top and goes into the capital stabilization, and then we have our other capital needs. Of course, we have to wait and see. We know it's been a couple of bad years, and have our free cash certified, see where we are, see where the schools come in, and like we all know, we've had the big debt with the DPW and the Whitman Middle School and the VOTEC, right? That's coming up January 25th. So that's another hit impact for the town. So I don't think...
What is our percentage on that? What is that number?
First year to be 24% for the VOTEC building.
Is that what we have for enrollment? About 24%?
About 24%.
We're at about 24%.
But
If they amend the regional agreement, it'll change every year.
Yeah.
If they don't, we're 24% straight through.
And Don, that's the main reason we're having the December 2nd special town meeting. It's really for the main article of the regional agreement amendment from South Shore VOTEC, which will change the way in which the town's debt is allocated. Right now, if nothing is done with the regional agreement amendment, you would pay, say Whitman is 24%, and it could be 24% for 30 years for the life of the debt. I mean, they'll do the first calculation for about 3 years. But if we do this regional agreement amendment and it passes, they will do a look back every year from the previous 4. So as our enrollment goes down, more towns join. Our enrollment could go down from 24% to,
Actually, so we
15%.
will probably go down to 21, 22% when Marshfield's fully integrated.
Exactly.
But
But down the road.
yeah, but
that
down the road,
would
if
still
Pembroke joins,
change.
they're exploring it now.
What is our enrollment there now?
24.
Uh,
We're the biggest town.
And so we don't want to, have that percent for our debt for the next 30 years when our enrollment really, in theory, could be going down each year.
Yeah.
And yet we're still paying 24%. So that's a huge article for the special that is coming up, and I hope it passes. But I think that we still need to have a capital committee.
I don't disagree. I just want a committee that means something.
But I think that, when we send out to these departments, gives them enough time, hold the line if they don't get it in. Say, no, I know.
Didn't we have that conversation last year?
We had some. The committee chooses not to make a recommendation on this.
We did.
We're down last
Yeah.
year,
And
and I
it
think
didn't pass.
and they didn't pass the town meeting. So we did exercise some of that leverage.
That was more, I think, because Hanson didn't have
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
funding to do it.
that was
That was
not.
that was different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But our
May I-
prioritization was used.
Nope.
Oh, this
Oh,
Frank.
sorry.
What was that, Frank?
May I interject?
yes.
One of the solutions to this, I'm just thinking out loud, is this committee needs to meet with the Board of Selectmen to express what our concerns are and what support we have from a managerial standpoint to require submissions to the point where perhaps the board would be willing to commit to not allow an article on the warrant
I agree.
Yep.
I agree.
if
Definitely.
the process isn't followed. Because that's your ultimate hammer.
Right.
It's great at the first meeting this year for the capital committee to have those comments. We were having those comments right up until I was submitting recommendations to the finance committee, and the school was still way behind. It's awfully tough to say we're not going to do anything for the kids. We wouldn't get much town support. It would be a difficult fight. I don't. That's what I don't understand. What the solution is? I mean, would George being here, would that be a solution? Does
Yeah.
George want to join this committee? Does he have other things on his plate that would hinder him from joining us?
Kathleen, you had a
I've
discussion with
spoken
him?
with George. I didn't say explicitly, will you be the liaison to the Capitol, but I made it clear that we desperately need someone from the schools to tell us what they need. If we say it's missing the following backup, go back to the facilities manager and say, I need quotes. I need additional information before the Capitol Committee will consider it. We also need a school committee member who acknowledges that it's his or her responsibility, just as it's mine as FinCom, to come here and represent the FinCom's position or the school committee's position, but then go back to the school committee and say, all right, these are the questions that the capital committee is asking. They do have a budget, they have a capital budget committee. I don't know who is on it, maybe Stephen Boyce, but somebody who's on their capital budget committee should be here to advocate
Yeah.
for what they're requesting.
That would be the right person.
And get the information that we require, get the information back from the personnel who are paid to be generators of information.
Yeah.
I'm
Committee members
guessing.
want someone-
I'm guessing their two biggest, I guess, capital items or capital needs would be through facilities or technology.
Right.
That's it, right?
It's general.
Really,
Yeah.
maybe one of each. I got a couple hands up. Josh first.
So I think we sort of had this conversation again previously, and to my knowledge, I think if we were trying to strong arm the schools as there was conversations last year, there was some conversation, and Frank can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was some conversation in relation to, well, if you're going to play that way, we're just going to take the capital and put it in as part of our assessment and call it a day. How does that work? Because essentially, if it's part of their assessment, what recourse do we
They
have
to
as a
change
committee?
their regional agreement to do that at this point.
You know?
I
But
think
that's
the
why I'm
93
raising-
allows it.
Mary, go ahead.
I think the 93 agreement allows it.
We
Yes.
had a regional agreement committee last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jeff did bring that up. That first thing they wanted to take care of was busing, and then another issue they want to discuss is capital. And I immediately went back to a year ago when it was mentioned at a regional agreement committee. And to me, I worry about that because then they can put on what they want. It eats up our free cash, and then what do the other departments have left to work with? So I already mentioned something to you, Justin, of my concern about
Yeah.
that. I don't know where that conversation will go on that committee, but I'm already anticipating that wouldn't, and I'm not trying to stronghold it, I'm just saying even
Right.
our own departments.
But excluding the
Give
high
them
school,
deadlines.
there are buildings throughout the town that we have to balance with our other capital needs, which are
Exactly.
primarily IT and facilities.
No,
Like, it's
absolutely.
the same-
I mean,
we're
absolutely.
the same
But-
pot of money for the same needs.
But I think it goes back to that same question that Dawn had started this conversation with, like, what is our role in this whole process, and do we have the authority to trying to do what we're doing here? And at the same time, everyone's going to play in the field together, and unfortunately, if we can't get that, effort to work together and collaboratively, I don't know. I mean, you can't hold all these departments accountable and then say, okay. I mean, the other departments are going to go, well, wait a minute. Like, there's one large department in town here that, not for nothing, but we do a lot of work to prepare for all this stuff. And
I think it starts with bringing them to the table, right? They're not even here, and that those two we have to fill.
Well, we have the new committee member. Do you want to add anything to this, or are you just absorbing everything right now?
So I agree with a lot with what Frank said. I think a 5-year plan is important, but it makes it's important if everybody's on board. You need all the department heads on board. You also need the backing of the select board, town management. Without us having some sort of authority, it makes it incredibly hard to do any sort of job here. I would think. But if we could get the backing of management, set some sort of process out where it's, I don't know, bylaw or something like that, where there is some sort of process where it's like, all right, we need to get your capital assessments in by this date every year. If you don't get it in by this date, almost like what you said, you're almost out of luck. You know what I mean? And it's like, I think if we had the backing of the management, and once you get all the department heads on board, even if they just submitted, like, it doesn't have to be something detailed, a list for your 5-year plan of what you think you're going to need, and you're not stuck to that for the next 5 years. Every year something changes, you update your list. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be super detailed, but if we can know like the big picture of what you're thinking about, what kind of big items, like what he was saying about the fire or whatever, it's like, if you knew about that, if we knew about that coming, we could have planned for it, So
Exactly.
I think you need everybody on board, department heads, management, and to give us some sort of authority to have a process that everybody's held accountable to.
It was a good
You know-
assessment, and that's kind of where I think we're all talking about. That's trying to figure that out.
Frank.
Frank?
Dawn, I unfortunately can't put my hand up because no one could see it. The interesting comment was just made, and it related to bylaw. We do not operate under a bylaw. We operate under a vote of town meeting, and that can be changed from year to year. I suppose a bylaw could too, but there's a little more involved in it. Perhaps we could look at and put some information together, gather it from a few other communities. There are a few I'm thinking of that are comparable to Whitman, and I will reach out and get that information from them. But to establish a capital bylaw that specifies when submissions are made, what is required in order to submit it, stipulate that if the process isn't followed, absent extraordinary circumstances and a vote of the Board of Selectmen, it would not appear on a warrant. That may give us some teeth to get the submissions in. Then we work with the process of figuring out how to pay for it. Remember, that initial study included a recommendation to have a capital override to add 1%, or $1 million, I think it was, a year, or its equivalent growth earnings, into a capital fund so that we would have the ability to identify what and when we could pay for things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to lose sight of that either.
Mm.
But is the town required to put the school district's assessment on the town meeting warrant?
Yes, the school district is an elected board and has the right to present requests to town meeting.
Exactly.
We've gone back and forth with the district on that. I think
Yeah,
school
clearly,
council
Chapter
believes that
71 says the schools have a right to present their budget,
the assessment
whatever
has to
that
be put on the
budget
warrant.
may be.
We agree with that. I think school council may have given them guidance that capital requests also have to be presented on the warrant. Town council didn't necessarily agree with that selectmen have the ultimate say on capital articles. But
Right. So
we want to get into that splitting hairs and whose lawyer is correct
Right.
fight.
And Frank, you are correct. I did look at the bylaws for committees, and it's the Finance Committee, it's the Council on Aging, and it's the Community Preservation. Capital is not one that is in our bylaws. It's a
Well,
vote
you,
of
you
town
can
meeting.
blame me for that. In my early days, I thought we were better off with the town meeting.
We're not blaming anyone.
But yeah, you'll find most towns have a capital bylaw. This was something that actually Sean
Kane.
brought up when he was on the finance committee about why don't we have a bylaw for capital.
I think it's a good idea.
I think once the issues are worked out and it's codified and presented to town meeting to adopt, then we have something to work with because it puts everyone on a level playing field.
Mhm.
I really hate that we sometimes sound like we're ganging up against the schools, and I really don't want that to be the understanding of what we're doing here. It's a frustration. First, recognizing that school districts generate an enormous amount of need, both in revenue and in capital. And as a consequence, they have a very big share of what we ultimately do in our capital spending. But there has to be some management and control of it at the funding level. And that's where the bylaw, if it's properly thought out and worked up, can be effective.
Very good.
Okay. Kathleen, did you want to add anything to my
Other than
opening
to
statement?
reiterate that I believe that the capital committee forms an important function for the town. It has the ability to improve, as we all do, but sitting on the finance committee, we rely on recommendations from the capital committee because we're busy looking at the operating budgets of all the departments. We don't have time to dig into the capital requests as well. So when you came in last year as chair of the capital committee, we rely on the recommendations that this committee votes being presented to finance to be able to decide that we're going to support it or we're going to recommend against it.
Right. Justin?
I think we've said most of it. I do think we also want to consider, and maybe bring this to the select board, to have the discussion
Right.
on what our role is between, the capital committee reviewing capital requests, the finance committee working out how much we can spend any given year, and the select board putting things on the warrant. I think we had a very clear path that a project flows through to get to present it to town meeting. That might help us plan this out.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to summarize some of the things that I'm hearing that I think could help. I'm hearing that everybody feels that there's a need for a capital committee, as long as it's a functional capital committee that has some authority or has some meaning. I should use the word. I think that can benefit the town and can have some oversight to make sure that purchases are I guess, going through the checks and balances of certain purchases. I know we've done some good things where we've changed requests probably for the better of the town. You know, and I don't need to go into the history of those, but I think we all know what they were. Okay, so why don't we plan on, do you guys, Frank, when are you back in town?
I'm up in Vermont for a week. I'll be back next week. And actually, I will start digging into that information at that point. May I make a suggestion
Sure.
that the town administrator send a memo to all departments, including the school district, noting that our annual expectation for capital requests are that they be in by October 1st. That ship has sailed, and that any one wishing to have capital requests addressed must submit prior to November 30th.
Do you think that's a little bit tight? I think we should probably,
No, I don't.
No.
you know? Okay,
No, because they should have been thinking about this all along.
Right.
It
okay,
gives them 3 weeks.
They know there's a town meeting article that says October 1st.
okay. All right, then I'm fine with that. I think going forward, Frank, can you draft up some type of language with the,
Sure.
I guess, the to present to the selectmen for creating a bylaw on the capital committee? And
I will work on that.
And I would like to have some of the language in there that we previously,
30th.
that you previously had in the mission statement that Lincoln
Removed, yeah.
removed when I was first capital chair, probably 4 or 5 years ago. That I regretted agreeing to it. The day after I did it, and I would like that language back in there.
October 2020 when I waved goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should, and just for those that might not be aware, I think the language I'm talking about is we would have oversight on the capital capital requests. So what I meant, but what that means to me is we would be able to. We'll go back to the fire panel scenario. If we're buying every building a different fire alarm panel, that means we have to have spare parts, probably different technicians or different skilled technicians to be able to work on all these fire alarm panels. When typically they're basically all the same cost, all the same install costs. I just think it's a smart business decision or town decision to make a selection or to help push capital expenditures to one vendor, to one manufacturer or another. I think it helps us. Same with building automations, and I'm talking all facility stuff. Josh can probably feel the same way with technology. You know, why have a bunch of mongrel pieces of equipment, one-offs, compared to just having standardization on different things? I think it makes sense, personally. I just think it makes good business sense. So,
John, we can do that, but under the Chapter 30B, which is the state procurement law,
yeah,
we are not allowed to specify a particular manufacturer unless it is a sole source purchase. In other words, that no one else makes it. So we can emphasize the desire to have a
Right.
particular product, but the specifications for bidding are you identify what you want or equal is what you have to include
Yep.
when you seek bids for that.
Yep, and I think we've all been through the bidding process and the request for proposal process. In there's certain ways you can write a specification to
Yep.
kind of
Right.
achieve that.
Mhm.
So I think we've all been down that road before.
We just did it for the middle school, so.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying. Legally, I'm totally on board with what you're saying. But I think
Yeah,
there's
ideally, we'd all be on the same platform.
yep. I just think it makes good business sense for as a town. All right, so Frank, if you can work on that, I'll work on it with you if you want. If you want to send me a couple drafts, and we can chew on that for a little bit.
Okay?
Let me put on this.
I'll send the memo out tomorrow.
Okay, so if we're talking 3 weeks, we're talking November 31st. Do you guys want to meet?
November 31st.
That'll be December 1st.
Don, can I say one thing?
Sure.
Are we going to meet with the selectmen or no?
I think we have this drafted.
Yeah.
We push out or Mary pushes out the email to the department heads to give us their 5-year plan. And then I think we meet and we all agree on the memo that goes to the selectmen. We vote on that as a unified force, and then Justin can bring it to the selectmen.
Clarification.
Yeah, and I think the expectation would be that we meet with the selectmen probably either late December or January. It's not going to happen sooner than
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, Frank, there's no Tuesdays in late December. It's Christmas and New Year's.
that. Right.
Am I sending a request just for their capital items, or you just said 5-year plan now? Are we asking?
I
by
would say
November
capital
30th?
and 5-year plan.
By
I'd include both, but just prioritizing the capital for this year.
Prior to Mary Beth, I guess the way to express it would be that, and we can talk offline on this if you want, but basically, you know that we have required for a number of years that you submit a capital request and 5-year plan annually, and we are looking for your capital needs for fiscal 20. That's going to be 26, right?
Mhm.
Correct.
Yes.
By December 1st.
Yep.
We are also seeking a 5-year capital plan. And
We could get
would
that
like
February
as soon
1st.
after the submission of the articles as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can give them time on the 5-year plan, February 1 or something.
Yeah.
That
As
can
soon as
lag.
practical.
Yeah.
So I'll put 2 different dates in it then.
Yeah,
That's what we're doing.
I think that's reasonable.
So okay, you want 12/1 for the capital?
12
request?
for this 2026 capital,
Yep, and
and February 1 for the 5-year plan.
2 more months.
Yeah. And that would be after we've met with the selectmen in January, so we'll at least have a better sense of direction.
Okay.
All right. I'm going down the agenda. I don't have the 5-year. I know I pushed it out last year, but I'd like to skip over the review and discussion of the 5-year capital request spreadsheet.
Agreed.
Yep.
We can do that before we implement 5-year plan, 5-year capital needs into the spreadsheet, and we can do that together, and we can see how it works, and we can say add, delete, whatever, move. The conversation on adopting the Roberts rule, I think we could probably take that off, and I think we should vote that we do adopt that, right?
We had that discussion.
I think we
It
did.
was based on my frustration that the 2 women on the committee politely raised their hands, waiting forever to be recognized, and the others did not necessarily recognize our patient observance of being waited to call, and so we've dealt with that.
Okay. We had the discussions on the mission statement in the committee's purview. Any discussions related or concerning for the capital committee? Does anybody have anything they want to bring new to the table for the capital committee?
Nope.
Okay. With that, should I look in the calendar and push out an email to everybody or a meeting invite to everybody?
Can we target Thursdays just because every other day of the week has some committee meeting competing for at least one member of this committee?
I think this we did last year.
Yeah,
We did
Thursdays
Thursday.
last year.
Yes.
I'm fine with
I gave
Thursdays.
preference.
Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so
And we're going to try to get somebody from the school.
Yes.
Yes.
so let's talk about that before we move on.
Yeah.
What do we want from the school? I don't want. I think the reason why I asked what are the two biggest school committee capital needs, facilities and technologies. It would be nice if we could have both. You know, at least to the person appointed to the committee, it would be really good probably to have the facilities guy, because I think there's going to be a lot more of that. But during the request submissions to us, I think it would be nice to have both the technology person and the facility person at the same time, because I think we had Gideon here at one time, and he couldn't speak on any of the facility stuff, and it didn't buy us much. So I don't know if the letters going out to the department heads, if a separate letter going out to the school committee could request that when they're submitting their capital request, to have somebody from facilities with the district and somebody from technology with the district at the same time to basically go through everything. And other than that, the committee member or the committee liaison should, if it can be a facilities person, I think it would be better, but either or. But I think it should be somebody like that than somebody that doesn't have any knowledge of either of those.
Right.
Josh?
So yeah, Gideon resigned, so he's no longer with the district. So they don't have a technology director.
Who's the facility director? Do they
Mike
have-
Driscoll,
Mike Driscoll's serving in that capacity. I don't know if he has the title, but he is.
the facilities director.
Does he have that title?
Mike Driscoll is a facilities director, but I'm saying there's no technology director.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe both are unified under the assistant superintendent. So George
Yes.
should be able to speak on both.
Yes.
That's what I was
agree.
thinking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Then if George could attend that.
That would be.
That-
Be the ideal liaison.
George
Yeah.
would be ideal to be the liaison.
Okay.
Just understand that from a technical perspective, it may be a little difficult to, George, again, knows the business side, I think, more than the technology side, but
He should be able to convey the information that his technology point person gives him, saying this is what we need and this is why we need it. And if he can't answer the questions we have for him, he can go back, come back at the next meeting.
True.
Or communicate. This is the information I've received from my technology point person.
Do you want to reach out to him, Kathleen, or?
I'll touch
To George,
base with
see?
George. Yeah, I'll contact George.
And then we would need to appoint him at the,
Liaison.
you sent a request to the,
The school committee appoints the liaison. The select board appoints the school committee member that would serve as a voting member.
But it has to be someone willing to show up at our meetings.
Right.
And acknowledge that he or she is the school committee appointed
representative.
representative.
Wow.
And serve the role that we expect them to serve.
So Mike Driscoll is the facilities guy now?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Does he have a background in facilities?
I can't answer that.
I didn't
It's
think
not
he
that I
did.
won't answer that, it's I can't answer that.
I didn't think he did though.
no?
Yeah.
I
Well,
believe.
let's move that alone for now.
Yes. Yeah.
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 Yes.
Good point.
Okay.
Just needed a date for our next meeting.
Okay. And Gideon's gone.
Yes.
Yes. He's in Woburn Public Schools.
Okay. What are we talking Thursdays now? Do you
Yes.
want to, after we get the request back on the 1st, so we'd be talking the first Thursday in December, which would be the 5th?
Yep.
Yep.
Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Let's see.
I have a kid with me, but yeah,
Yep.
That's all right.
she'll either
She's
be here
awesome.
or at rec downstairs.
She's awesome. She was great last time.
5:30.
5:30.
I'll be honest with you, I may have to call in.
That's fine.
Ooh,
I don't
Did
know
I
if
just
I'll be
send
able to make the
something
5th.
Okay.
I meant to add it to my calendar.
Can you do the 12th?
Yes, I could do
I
that.
think you did.
Might work better for me too.
Okay. Frank, the 12th?
Yep.
Mary?
I can make that work right now, yes.
Todd?
Yep, I'm good.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Okay.
Tom?
Yep.
Okay.
Josh? Yes.
And this is the town hall meeting one. Okay.
You want me to send the invite, or are you going to do it?
Yeah, if you want to, that's fine.
5:30 on the 12th.
Yep.
1 hour,
Yep.
hopefully.
Hopefully.
So I'm going to decline this one on the 5th.
What was that?
Decline the meeting request for the.
Yes, I think I went to add it and it has 9 invitees. I just went to add it to my
Yep,
calendar.
I saw it.
Decline that.
I did put a Teams link in there, so if you do need to join, anybody needs to join remotely, we can do that.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay, 12.
I've got
Yes.
a portable like
Mary Beth.
speakerphone that would
You have.
plugs into that. And it's really good.
No, I have it in the office. I just didn't.
Oh.
I didn't even think about it when I. So it would have been a lot easier to hear him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we get it up there or not?
What?
The Zoom?
But I don't want to send it. I just want
Up here? Yeah, I mean, we could connect it in HDMI to the projector, but your speaker's going to come off the projector unless we have the third, like another. Like I can bring the speaker next to
Okay.
him so that we have it, but yeah, we could get him on the big picture here, but we don't have a camera necessarily in this setup here, so we'd have to run off the.
Was that WHCA?
What was that?
The little owl thing was that WHCA?
Yes.
Dial in
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And I was on screen the entire time. Nobody told me.
No.
Yes.
Pandemic. Very person back then.
Okay.
12, right?
All right. So
That's how I do it.
Donna, Justin, Todd.
Don, I'll be in touch offline on that other project.
Excellent. Thank you.
Now I do capital, right? When I
So-
do that, it says not.
All right. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Woohoo!
Second.
All in favor?
Hey, I got a motion on the floor. I got a second.
Aye, 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 aye.
Aye. Do you
Aye,
need
aye, aye. Okay.
Unanimous.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
Enjoy the rest of your
Did
vacation.
you send something out, Josh?
What's that? That's the.
I might have because
Oh,
I,
for-
when I try to add.
Hold
to
on.
it,
For sake of the thing, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Josh, can you second it? Frank's remote. It should have been roll call if he's voting.
Oh, true. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So motion second.
Yeah. Second.
Aye, aye, aye. Everybody, aye. Okay.
Yes. Justin called it. Josh seconded.
I have a Zoom
Everybody's in agreement.
firm that we vote
Did you send out a meeting?